Hello everybody, my name is Sunney Rabbit. In case you couldn't tell, StarClan has changed over the course of the Warriors series. It's strange reading the books so close together and seeing how Series 1 StarClan is drastically different from that of A Vision of Shadows and the Broken Code. This video was going to be more of a how StarClan functions and the collection of powers they have, but as I wrote it, it became more of an analysis of some of the world building StarClan has brought with it. I'll try to be as unbiased as I can, but I'm only a rabbit and the topic of StarClan gets me a bit heated. As much as I'd like it to be ordered by book series, some things were retconned in, so there might be a couple of books out of order. Spoilers ahead for the whole of the Warrior Cats main series and some of the Super Editions and Novellas. I'll try to be as informative as I can while still keeping the information brief. The script is already 4 times the size of my normal ones, and it will be best to just hop right into the content. To start off with, Cats of the Clans believe in StarClan, or at the very least, they're the ones with the majority access to it. StarClan can cover the full moon with clouds, visit cats in dreams, and share prophecies and omens with the clans. Medicine cats are responsible for interpreting signs in the forest to see what StarClan wants to tell them, but StarClan can still visit those they just have advice for, regardless of if they're a medicine cat or not. StarClan's hunting grounds seem to at least have some sort of physical boundary. During the Great Journey, cats had to wait for a sign from StarClan because it took their ancestors time to travel from the forest to the lake.
Peace, little one. Spotted Leaf mewed. Don't forget that StarClan had to travel here too.
The connection to the warrior ancestors' hunting grounds after death seems to be very spiritual. Spiritual in the sense that you can die anywhere, but if you believe in StarClan, you can still go there. As was the case with the SkyClan cats who left the gorge. Despite being miles away from the forest, they managed to form their own personal SkyClan StarClan by themselves, and with Sandstorm dying on the way to the gorge, but managed to go to StarClan even well outside where they would be watching the clans. Cats need to be accepted by the ancestors of whichever afterlife they're going to, as seen with Feathertail. When she died, her spirit stayed with the tribe of Endless Hunting, but she can also still cross over to StarClan. Feathertail is seen physically leaving StarClan to go back to the tribe of Endless Hunting. The tribe of Endless Hunting welcomed her into their skies because she saved them from Sharptooth, as Feathertail was never shown to believe in the tribe's ancestors. We have another instance of this with Spiresight being accepted into StarClan when Tigerheart gave him a warrior name. The original StarClan powers showed that they could visit cats' dreams without the need of the Moonpool or Moonstone. In the first series, Spotted Leaf could visit Firestar to tell him about prophecies, give advice, or warnings. Spotted Leaf seemed to always be lingering around Firestar for one reason or another. Visits from StarClan still happen, but it doesn't occur as frequently in the later arcs. Usually they'll receive a single warning, then 1 or 2 follow-up dreams about the same prophecy instead of various visits. StarClan cats can give prey to living cats, and it affects them in real life, as Silverstream gave Firestar a fish and he felt full in the waking world. StarClan is described as having no borders and that every cat is equal. We do see a lot of leaders and medicine cats as opposed to just regular warriors outside of 9 Lives ceremonies. Cats who are loyal, brave, and did their best for their clan are rewarded with good hunting, swift running, and shelter when they sleep for all of eternity. Terms and conditions may apply. StarClan has the ability to give leaders 9 lives. They take away the life that the leader-to-be currently has and replaces it with the wisdom of 9 other cats. When a leader dies, their spirit travels to StarClan while their body heals, though even this has limitations. Tigerstar the First had all of his 9 lives taken in an extremely fatal injury to all of his vital organs, so StarClan can't cure everything. Illnesses are cured after a life is taken, but the weakness from losing the life itself can leave the leader open to being reinfected, then dying again. When a leader loses a life, part of their spirit stays in StarClan, sort of like a ghost. Slowly, the ghost becomes more solid as the leader loses more lives. If you were to ask me to describe StarClan in Series 1, the first word that comes to mind is benevolent. Clearly, they're a guiding force of good for the clans. StarClan is prone to doing acts of goodness. Warrior ancestors come down to the clans to direct them into making the best possible choices. StarClan isn't the fix for everything, however. They granted Tigerstar and Brokenstar 9 lives while denying the same right to Nightstar. Warnings can be given to the clans beforehand, though in Series 1 it isn't shown where these prophecies come from. Prophecies seem to always come true. There's a predetermined fate that all cats are destined to live. When warriors die, their spirit joins their warrior ancestors so that they can aid in the clans living peaceful lives in the forest. But if good cats go to StarClan, where do bad cats go? Series 2 introduces the concept of the Dark Forest, or the Place of No Stars. It was described as a place of endless solitude for cats that were sent there, wandering through mist so thick that they could never hope of finding another cat. Well, that is until Tigerstar ran into Darkstripe. This is a chance meeting that seemed to be the catalyst for the Dark Forest growing stronger in power. Let's put a pin in that, actually. The Dark Forest being introduced showed that cats whose spirits were hurt reflected those injuries on their physical bodies. Tigerstar could walk in dreams similar to StarClan, and the Dark Forest territory had its own ThunderClan camp that Brambleclaw trained in. Tigerstar was shown to be planning something at the very least, as he was trying to recruit his own children to train with him. But Mothwing was a non-believer, Tawnypelt turned him down, and Hawkfrost died. Dark Forest recruitment goes all the way back chronologically to Crooked Star's promise. Thistleclaw and Silverhawk were training with Mapleshade before the start of Series 1. There wasn't a lot added in terms of lore outside the place of no stars for Series 2. We were introduced to Midnight the Badger. She gave the warning of the forest being destroyed so animals outside the cats have knowledge of the warrior lifestyle. Series 3 is where things started ramping up. Ultimately a setup for Omen of the Stars, it was the first occurrence we had of a dark forest cat crossing over from the dream world to the living world. Tiger Star appeared in front of Lion Paw, and this was like nothing we've ever seen before, so dark forest cats have the same ability to visit the living and the waking world. Technically, the dark forest cats visiting the living isn't unheard of before Tiger Star did it. Maple Shade was visiting Crooked Star in his dreams back in the forest territories. Series 3 also introduced Fallen Leaves, a cat whose spirit was trapped under the tunnels beneath the lake territories. Although many cats did die in the tunnels, Fallen Leaves was the only one shown to still be lingering around. At the very least, if a cat can't move on, they'll stay in the physical world to wander. Cats can see the spirits that are lingering around in the real world. Tree and Root Spring were born with this ability. It's not clear where this power stems from. On the topic of powers, Yellowfang had the ability to feel other cats' pain. Goosefeather could see premonitions of the future. Medicine cats in general seemed more likely to be born with special abilities or getting visions from the future. Flametail and Cinderpelt got visions of their own deaths shortly before it happened. Jayfeather could also interact with Fallen Leaves and Rock without the use of the stick from time to time. Rock is a bit of an enigma for warrior cats. He's a spirit cat linked to a branch that J-Paw uses to time travel back into the past to convince the ancestors of the clans to leave the lake in search of new territory. Yeah, things got a little crazy in Power of 3. Rock can appear to J-Paw or communicate with him while he's in the stick dimension. He's an ancient cat from the original ancestors of the clans. He's older than StarClan but has knowledge about the tribe of endless hunting and the clans. There seems to be time travel in this series, I think. I'm not quite sure how it's supposed to work. Jayfeather was Jay's wing in a past life, but when Jayfeather goes back to the ancient cats, it appears as if Jay's wings just disappeared. Jayfeather makes up a lie about him feeling scared about traveling, but whether Jay's wing actually did or not isn't clear to me. Jay's wing does do all the things that Jayfeather does, so if it's a weird time loop thing that comes with past life time travel is up for debate, I suppose. This is the one aspect I'm truly unclear about with warrior cats. It's just something my mind has a hard time wrapping my head around. On the topic of reincarnation, cats can be reincarnated as different cats. Jayfeather, Dovewing, Lionblaze, and Cinderheart are all cats whose spirits lived a previous life. Reincarnation is not to be confused with resurrection that appeared in the Super Edition Tigerheart's Shadow. Tigerheart had died, but continued his current life after a leadership ceremony. He only received 8 lives instead of 9, which doesn't make sense considering that the 9 lives are given from 9 other cats, not the leader's current life plus 8 other cats. Tigerheart was told that it wasn't his time to die, which, considering how heavily warrior cats is into predetermined fate, I'm not sure what this could mean in StarClan terms. There was a kit who was destined to be leader, but they never brought Small Star back from the dead when he died. Spiresight saw a vision of Dovewing and Tigerheart come into the Guardian Cats. StarClan tried to reach Tigerheart through the healer. They knew he was there.
But my body is broken. I can't go back. It hurts so much. Don't make me go back.
Then die. What do we do, argue with you? I'm not on the debate team. This isn't mock trial.
Lionblaze tried to fight his fate, but that involved getting his lunch money taken by Ratscar, not reviving an already dead cat. Regardless, resurrection is possible. Remember that anytime a kid dies from green cough, by the way. When close to death, cats can be in the border of StarClan in real life. Jayfeather was able to bring back Poppy Frost when she was dying from green cough. Leafpool and Squirrelflight were in the same situation in Squirrelflight's Hope, where they were waiting to see if their bodies would recover from the rock slide. I'd like to briefly mention Midnight the Badger again. She's a badger who has a knowledge of the tribe, clans, and has a connection to StarClan too. She can walk in StarClan and talk to the warrior ancestors. According to the wiki, Midnight is an ancient ghost like Rock, so at the very least it's possible for ghosts in the world to still appear as living beings rather than the standard starry, semi-transparent bodies. Midnight didn't have to be seen by using a special power either, which is especially interesting. In the Power of 3, it's established that StarClan had nothing to do with the powers the 3 have. It's just something that was foretold ages ago. Something StarClan had no control over.
The prophecy. I wish they'd never heard about it. I wish I'd never heard about it. Sometimes I think it would have been better if they hadn't been given their powers at all.
Spotted Leaf brushed her tail along Yellowfang's flank.
You know we had nothing to do with that,
She soothed.
We just have to hope they use their powers wisely, for the good of ThunderClan.
Just ThunderClan? Whitestorm looked thoughtful. If their powers are so great, shouldn't they be used to help all the clans? Bluestar widened her eyes.
These kits were born into ThunderClan. They have been raised as loyal ThunderClan warriors. Why should they feel responsibility toward any other clan?
But in Squirrelflight's Hope, we get this line.
Longstar spoke for the first time. Leafpool is right about her kits. They helped save the clans from the Dark Forest. Only because we chose them, Mothflight snapped. We could have chosen any cat.
I'm not sure which of these is the in-universe canon explanation. There doesn't seem to be clarification either. This isn't like some things where it evolves over time. This is just straight up contradictory information. Unless I'm missing some context from a novella, or I'm wildly misinterpreting what Mothflight is saying. The fourth series, Omen of the Stars, brought up the concept that if there were no cats to believe in StarClan, it would cease to be. This is strange, as SkyClan's ancestors were only remembered by Skywatcher at the time, but there didn't seem to be any talk of fading being an issue. I can only chalk this up to continuity issues that Firestar's quest had when reading chronologically. This was the same book that said he had 6 lives left despite taking place 6 months after the events of the Darkest Hour, throwing Firestar's life count off completely if you read the books in order of timeline, not by release date. It's explained that StarClan and the Dark Forest gain power from more cats that remember them, so it makes sense that the power has been scaling with the exponentially growing cast. Cats that are new or remembered by their descendants have thicker outlines, while cats that have been there a while appear more like wraiths. Ouch! Oh look, there's that pin. Which brings us back to Tigerstar. Conniving, evil, and a ruthless killer that portrayed not only his leader but his whole clan. Cats in every clan were told nursery tales about Tigerstar recruiting BloodClan to rule the forest. All those memories of Tigerstar are what gave them the power to find Darkstripe in the Dark Forest, even after they should have been left to wander alone in the mist for years.
But you were, Rock spat. You fulfilled a prophecy written at the beginning of time, and gave power to enemies who should long since have faded from the memories of all cats. Now, because of your existence, the clans face their darkest moment. You clan cats hold memories too long. You remember dead warriors and dwell on old enemies, passing on stories of battles that should be left behind, not picked over like rotting carcasses. The clans have brought this battle upon themselves. You bear grudges too long and refuse to let go of cats so cruel and unnatural they deserve to be forgotten. You keep them alive in your memories, and let them find kindred spirits at the edges of StarClan where no star dares shine.
Just the memories of the cats was enough to strengthen the Dark Forest enough to lead to the Great Battle. The Dark Forest and StarClan aren't a reflection or a direct one-to-one to each other, though. StarClan is supposed to be stronger than the Dark Forest. The Dark Forest was never meant to grow so powerful, even though it was prophesied. If Tigerstar had never been evil or been killed before he became leader of ShadowClan, I doubt the Dark Forest would have become so powerful so quickly. Tiger Claw, more like Tiger Clout, am I right? Furthermore, StarClan's hunting grounds reflect the unity of the clans and StarClan. Leafball began to occur in StarClan for the first time because of the division that Yellowfang caused. When even StarClan itself was separated into their own clans, the hunting grounds physically deteriorated until Jayfeather and the other medicine cats united everyone again. Defeating the Dark Forest cats and coming together restored StarClan to its original state. I always thought that the message of forgetting terrible cats so their spirits wouldn't linger was an interesting thing for the series to explore, but the books never really scratched that itch. Is it worth forgetting cats like Broken Star or Tigerstar in hopes their spirits will fade for good? You'd want to remember what tyranny or destruction happened when bad cats were left to lead. Since StarClan and the Dark Forest plots went to the sidelines with a Vision of Shadows, it's never really relevant to the story. I think it would be something interesting that the books could expand upon if they were given the chance to explore the themes of forgetting evil cats versus remembering all the terrible things they've done. As Omen of the Stars ended, Bramblestar Storm and a Vision of Shadows showed where prophecies and messages come from. Bramblestar Storm had Cloudstar giving a message to Firestar to relay to Bramblestar. Where this message originally came from isn't shown, so there is some sort of higher power that StarClan can use to see into the future. A Vision of Shadows had the Ghost of ShadowClan cats creating their own prophecy as a way to influence the living cats. They did make it intentionally cryptic too. They discussed what message they would send to the living cats, meaning they couldn't just outright say what the clans needed to be doing. StarClan has always had a somewhat hands-off approach to guiding the clans. They say they don't want to tell the clans what to do. Living cats wouldn't have that much free will if they did. StarClan can only set them on the right paths of what their destinies are supposed to be. A Vision of Shadows didn't add anything too notable to the lore of StarClan. Most of the series' conflict was clan versus clan, prophecies and omens here and there. Nothing truly expanded upon in a noteworthy way other than the introduction of the sisters to the series. The sisters can see ghosts with their special powers. Some of them can listen to the earth, which is like a spidey sense, echolocation thing. Cats with the power can x-ray vision into the dirt, okay? The concept of the StarClan trials was added in Squirrelflight's Hope.
This is where StarClan meets to decide the fate of every cat, Firestar told her. As he spoke, starlight glittered between the trees. They'll hear what you have to say, he told her. His tail twitched uneasily. You're lucky, in a way. Most cats don't have the chance to speak for themselves. Their fate is decided before they reach us.
Without giving it much thought, it wasn't particularly hard to guess which cats would go where when they died. Someone like Tiger Star, Broken Star, or Darkstripe would obviously head to the Dark Forest. Apparently there isn't some higher force that places the cats in their respective afterlives. When Jayfeather goes to StarClan and sees Ashfur, he has this conversation with Blue Star.
When Blue Star didn't respond, he continued.
I mean, he's here, so StarClan must believe he was a good cat, and that means he shouldn't have died the way he did.
You won't learn anything by talking to Ashfur, she mewed. He knows who killed him, and why. Perhaps he did a lot to bring it on himself. Perhaps not. It is not StarClan's place to judge him. If he found his way here, then he must deserve to be here. That is what we all have to believe.
So in Omen of the Stars, it wasn't StarClan's place to judge him. But actually, no, it was. They intentionally put him there? There's not really a way to hold both of these concepts at the same time unless you just sort of slip past their death radar or something. In some way, I could kind of see how this could possibly work. Like they put his spirit at the border of StarClan and the Dark Forest, and then he went to StarClan, as Blue Star seems to be implying. Maybe the cats who were meant to judge him all didn't know what to do, and that's what they decided on. Though that's dipping into theory territory. Later on, StarClan takes full responsibility for Ashfur's placement in StarClan, so it might be a retcon. The whole Squirrel Flight's trial scene was infuriating, as the StarClan cats refused to bring up how they had a hand in Leafpool running off with Crowfeather and Squirrel Flight raising the kits as her own. Not only was Spotted Leaf's advice vague enough to be taken the wrong way, but after Leafpool found out she was going to be a mother, Yellowfang lied to Squirrel Flight and said that she could never have kits of her own. To sweeten the deal, Feathertail came down from the tribe of Endless Hunting to tell Squirrelflight and Leafpool that they absolutely had to lie to everyone in ThunderClan, despite both of their protests, because the kits were way too important to lose. Awfully convenient that everyone in StarClan just left that part out of the trial. Moving on from that, Squirrelflight's Hope also showed how dead cats could come to the living world. In Over the Stars, Dark Forest cats were just walking from one territory to the other. StarClan uses a pool to watch over the living cats. It's explained that the way Squirrelflight used to get to the living world isn't the conventional way that regular StarClan cats do it. The Broken Code adds a lot more to the lore pile than the last few books. Similar to Squirrelflight's Hope, ghosts have instant transmission DBZ style. They can think of where they want to go before popping up there no problem. Ghost and StarClan residents are two separate entities. Most obvious tell being that the ghost lacks the starry body of a StarClan cat. Spirits can move on to go to StarClan, and it seems like StarClan cats can go back to being ghosts too, as seen with Spiresight being a StarClan cat in Tigerheart's Shadow, which happens before the Broken Code where he's a regular ghost. Cats have some choice in where they end up. In Ravenpaw's Farewell, the titular Ravenpaw said that he would go wherever Barley's spirit would. He didn't know if Barley would go to StarClan in the end. Spiresight chose to remain as a ghost in the living world, even though StarClan had accepted him anyway. The concept of body stealing was introduced here. Ashfur took over Bramblestar's body after he lost a life. The clan cats seem worried that he'll take over another cat's body, but it's never shown that he could take over a regular warrior who died. Then it's later confirmed that he could probably only take over leaders. The powers in StarClan heal the wounds and send the cat back, though I suppose since Ashfur is a StarClan cat, he could have used that power for himself even if the cat didn't have 9 lives. Ashfur has the power to traverse from the living world to the spirit world even with a physical body. He can even bring living cats with him. The Moonpool acts as a sort of mirror or portal between the two worlds. He couldn't just take Squirrelflight to the Dark Forest whenever he wanted, or he most likely would have done that sooner. The Dark Forest has their own Moonpool, by the way, which makes sense in retrospect because it explains how Broken Star got to the Moonpool when he and Breezepelt attacked Jayfeather. Previously dead cats can leave bodies they have taken anytime they want. It puts the body in sort of a trance or a deep sleep, since Bramblestar's body wasn't stated to be dead when Ashfur had left it. I won't assume that Bramblestar was bleeding through his 9 lives every time Ashfur's spirit left his body. Ashfur can control the spirits in the Dark Forest and the Dark Forest itself. He says that he dug a hole to the Dark Forest and cut off the connection to StarClan with some brambles. I assume the power he possesses over the spirit cats is because the memories of the ancestors are going to him alone, since he's the only true StarClan cat that still has a connection to the forest. He has more control over the medicine cat spirits than regular warriors, no doubt because he's a StarClan warrior and medicine cats have a natural affinity towards StarClan. Having a balance between StarClan and the Dark Forest is key to why so much of the stuff happened within the Dark Forest. Eerie fog rolls in, dark water appears that makes spirits dissipate. It's different from the sludgy water that appeared in Omen of the Stars. It's sort of like a blanket that envelops a spirit. Dark Forest cats are wary of it too, so it doesn't just affect spirit cats or cats who are still alive. When Ashfur dug the tunnel from StarClan to the Dark Forest, it threw off the balance of the two areas. Originally, the pathway to the Dark Forest could only be accessed by StarClan. It was a treacherous route through a forest, but the direct link shook things out of whack when it was covered with the brambles. He also covered the moon pool StarClan uses, which remove the connection from the living world as well. StarClan can't exist without the Dark Forest, which is strange. Sure, they balance each other out, but the powers aren't exactly equal to each other. After the Dark Forest began to disappear, so did StarClan's hunting grounds. Luckily, our protagonists were able to reverse the damage to both places. If you die in the Dark Forest, you die in real life. Your body disappears as well, though it's not explained why the body goes away too. It's just gone without a trace for some reason. It's one of the creepier elements in the whole spirit shenanigans. You vanish completely, no body is left to bury, you just don't exist anymore. We saw this before with Beetle Whisker and Omen of the Stars. When he was killed in the Dark Forest, no one could find him. Something about Ivy Pole describing how she turned around then Bristlefrost was gone makes my skin crawl. Teleporting, body snatching, mind control. The authors have to up the stakes with some of the most wild concepts since we already did the fight between the ultimate good and ultimate evil, so what's next for powers isn't anyone's guess. StarClan's powers aren't explained in a linear way. There are retcons, backtracking, sudden jumps and skills that weren't previously seen or explained. I'm partial to the theory that the more cats there are, the stronger StarClan gets, so the exponential growth of the clan just causes some wacky things to happen regarding how powerful or how weak StarClan is. If you were to ask me now how I would describe StarClan after all the Super Editions, Novellas, and the main series books, well, it's complicated. Let's discuss. This is going to be where things in the video turn from being a list of StarClan's powers and more into an analysis of the more moral aspects of their afterlife. Gonna preface that this is going to be very critical since some of the writing has left a bitter taste in my mouth. StarClan isn't my most favorite fictional afterlife. It's alright, but even doing the research for it, it's in this weird place where I can pinpoint most of my grievances, but the books never seem to delve into these issues critically. Similar to the should warriors forget the evil cats or should they remember their evil deeds, some of these things that truly bother me about the current day StarClan are brought up or introduced as interesting concepts for a protagonist to engage with, and the books just don't. My biggest problem is the cats who visit the Dark Forest can be influenced to turn evil. At first it was implied that the Dark Forest cats themselves were manipulating their apprentices into being bad. Only a handful truly believed in the Dark Forest's cause. Most wanted to either be stronger warriors or were having their deepest insecurities exploited. Very few fought with the Dark Forest in the Great Battle in the very end. Beetle Whisker even died trying to rebel against fighting his own clan. The Broken Code says that the Forest itself brings out the worst in some cats. It feeds off their negative emotions. The way to dream yourself there is to focus on your bad thoughts. But in Omen of the Stars, it made it seem like it was somewhat involuntary. Ivy Pole doesn't want to sleep sometimes because she'll be transported to the Dark Forest for training instead of catching up on her rest. While Lion Plays vows never to return to the Dark Forest, I doubt that Tigerstar would have tried to make him come back there given the circumstances. Call it a retcon or a reinterpretation of the previous material that authors were working with. Fine. But the Dark Forest isn't a place where only the worst of the worst cats go. Leaf Pool could have been sent there for having kits. A medicine cat sent to the place where murderers and traitors are around every corner. Frecklewish the First got sent there despite the mental gymnastics it would take to justify placing her there. But even if she was truly remorseful about what happened with Mapleshade, the Dark Forest would just stir up those feelings of resentment just by the virtue of being there. No wonder all the cats there are terribly evil. The Forest keeps them bad. Can you really blame some of the Dark Forest residents for wanting to destroy StarClan when your internal resting place is a constant angst fest? The dilemma with having the Dark Forest be a place that feeds off of negative emotions, bringing out the worst in every cat, is that I'm not sure what to make of Omen in the Stars now. It removes a lot of the agency some of the cats had while fighting. Reespelt chose to fight with the Dark Forest, so did Red Willow. Was it their fault or the forest? Birchfall, Blossomfall, Mouse Whisker, and Thornclaw, allegedly, all fought on the side of ThunderClan. A big part of the Dark Forest trainees is that they were manipulated into fighting for them. The leaders of the Dark Forest obfuscated their real plans of defeating the clans because they knew 3/4 of the cats they brought there wouldn't have stayed. The bit of the Dark Forest feeding off negative energy adds an unnecessary layer to the whole thing. It cheapens some of the actions the Dark Forest cats intentionally needling the trainees into working for them under the guise of becoming better warriors. This isn't an excuse for some of the worst cats to have an out when explaining their actions. It just feels like a strange way of relieving some of the Dark Forest recruits of purposely working with the likes of Tigerstar or Broken Star, despite the reputations that those leaders had. If I had a nickel for every time a series I liked had an interesting take on religion, but later changed the lore so it's basically pseudo-Christianity, I'd have 2 nickels. It's not much, but it's weird that it happened twice. There's an objective good and an objective evil, no in between. Everything now fits into these neat little boxes where clan cats always come out on top. They must really be England the way they go around colonizing other groups of cats. If you've ever seen the way they interact with other groups of cats, specifically tribal rushing water, and especially the guardian cats, there's a sense of entitlement that comes with being a warrior. All the other groups must be like warriors or else they're doing something wrong. The guardian cats just can't be peaceful. They must defend their territory from intruders like warriors, despite how their way of life was perfectly fine beforehand, or how unrealistic it would be to claim a territory in a city where there are hundreds of stray cats. I did not like Tigerheart's shadow. It is beneath me. The tribe of Washing Water must have patrols in territory like warriors. Also, one of our cats should be the one to choose your next leader for the tribe for some reason. We never see the reverse happen, where a group of cats tries to help influence the way warriors live for the better. It's a bit off topic in regards to StarClan, I admit, but I wanted to bring it up anyways because it keeps happening. When I mean pseudo-Christianity, I mean moral grayness is not allowed for StarClan. It draws on elements from religion without considering the consequences of what that means for the writing. StarClan is heaven for our good cats, while the Dark Forest is an eternal hell. Medicine cats are essentially our nuns, so that they have to have a rule about not having kits. There's enough distance from a real-life religion, but still tying into this weird culty fundamentalism where every cat must believe in StarClan, give their lives to StarClan unquestioningly. Right when you think the cats will address some of the unfairness or straight-up negligence that StarClan shows, the next arc pivots right back to the medicine cats having unwavering loyalty. I thought Jayfeather might have a more nuanced look on StarClan given everything that's happened to his mother, his relationship with Yellowfang, or the entirety of the Great Battle. Despite this, he's so loyal to StarClan, he reveals Mothwing's secret to a whole gathering when he gets pissy when she talks some sense. Jayfeather seems the most dedicated to StarClan when his personality shows him snapping or being difficult with others just for the sake of it. The books will come up with some of the most insane in-universe justifications for some of the rules, which we'll discuss in a bit. I get so heated when thinking about StarClan. There was a mystery to it, some level of distance to make it feel like some ethereal afterlife. Now everything has to be explained away, and every justification afterwards makes it a worse place. Cats get sent for their Dark Force unjustly, then our heroes come up with some of the most baffling arguments for why eternal suffering is good actually. Ambition is seen as a bad thing. You must do what you were destined to do, sacrifice their happiness for the greater good. Why do the clans even bother at this point? If StarClan is so easily defeated, so vague, so caught off guard with world-ending threats, what is it there for? StarClan doesn't get heat for letting Ashfur in though. They just made a mistake that cost several warriors their lives. Get out of here with that nonsense. StarClan could be so much more than just a basic heaven and hell. It's morphed from some ethereal afterlife to a playground for hypocrites to watch themselves in any criticism. Greywing says that actions in the afterlife can't get someone to StarClan because then it would be pointless to judge them at all. Or is it because Yellowfang pitted StarClan against each other and almost caused the destruction of the clans itself, and she would be judged for that? Her advice for the clans to only trust their own ancestors helped aid the Dark Force in being stronger, with the clan cats only barely managing to pull themselves together before the final fight. The only consequence that really happened to Yellowfang is that she was temporarily embarrassed. And by all means, StarClan is sexist. The Warrior Code just reflects straight up bias to males over females. Having a rule against medicine cats having kits only reflects on the female medicine cats more than the male ones. Fathers and warriors never particularly care for their kits. Hell, when some of the kits become apprentices, we barely see them interacting with their parents outside of sharing fresh kill. Sure, fathers may visit their kits or play with them from time to time. We never see them be too dedicated to watching over them outside of maybe Dustpelt or Berrynose. We were told that Fernsong took over Ivypool's kit duties when they were weaned, but the books themselves time skipped over what would have been an interesting switching of the gender roles in the clans. We got no insight into how ThunderClan saw this, or how Fernsong handled the parenting duties. One of the few, if not only times we see a Tom in the nursery, and it's just a blip in the books. Not worth exploring in any meaningful way. By all means, Bristlefrost should have a stronger relationship with her father than any other cat in the clan, but there's just nothing. Her strongest relationship is with her mother, but this is largely due to Ivypool being a previous protagonist. This goes into how there's no real rule for leaders to not have kits or take a mate, largely because being a leader or deputy is seen as a masculine job. We do have leaders that have kits in the main series. Misty Star has her kits ages before she was even deputy, and Leafstar, well, upon reading Hawkwing's journey, apparently SkyClan's Warrior Code had a rule about she-cat leaders not being able to have kits, which is, when was this ever a thing? Even the regular Warrior Code, there isn't a rule about female leaders not having kits. While I haven't read SkyClan's Destiny, a cursory glance shows that even if she was discouraged from having kits, there wasn't a rule about it. Leafstar had a manga centered around her meeting Soul in the Gorge. At the time, she was pregnant with her kits, and she did have doubts about leading both SkyClan and raising kits. But this doesn't make sense because they had a dedicated nursery queen at the time. Clovertail was shown to care about both the apprentices and to look after Leafstar's kits. Leafstar had the only litter in SkyClan at the time. There wasn't any competition for attention between litters. Clovertail did show some attention to the apprentices who were her kits, but if she was a nursery queen, her main duties would be the Leafstar's kits. Clovertail's main job was to look after anyone in the nursery. Leafstar had no sole obligation to raise the kits all by herself. Tigerheart left his clan to go chase down his mate and have clan kits. He wasn't a leader at the time, but he was deputy of ShadowClan. This act led to ShadowClan dissolving into SkyClan, but we never see the level of scrutiny be anywhere near what Leafpool faced. His actions caused more damage to ShadowClan than anything she could have possibly ever done. His relationship to his son Shadowsight even clouded his judgment several times through the Broken Code arc as a way to protect him and even his mate Dovewing. No one wanted to add a rule to the code about leaders and deputies being forbidden from raising a family. No cats talk about the divided loyalties between leaders, choosing between saving a clanmate or saving a kit when it's arguably more likely to happen than a medicine cat choosing between kits and clan. They're heavily discouraged, sure. We're talking about in addition to the warrior code that means punishment if broken. Rowensard himself practically spelled it out to Tigerheart that a leader's loyalty was to his clan. Scrollflight's hope showed that clans can help raise kits. The sisters raise kits communally, but the moment a medicine cat pops out a baby, suddenly it's all about loyalty. Medicine cats are largely seen as a feminine job, despite the main series having one more male medicine cat than female one. So the rule just seems like some weird implicit sexism that the clans just don't seem to have. Cats rarely make comments about the gender of another cat. No one would discount a female warrior over a male one. The no medicine cats kit rule just seems like a relic of a non-existent world building that the clans just don't seem to have. There's no precedent in the world that makes it seem okay. All the cats just accept the rule as something someone smarter than them made for a perfectly good reason. We are given these shoddy justifications for the code in-universe when the writing itself can't support these ideas. In some impossible hypothetical situation where both the warrior and the medicine cat's under 6-month-old kit have eaten deathberries and they will both die if the singular medicine cat doesn't do something immediately, but they have to make a choice about who to save, the warrior code itself tells them that the kit must be saved. It's in their own code that they'll have loyalty to the kit. No warrior would ever beg to have their life saved over a kit. That's not how the books work. Mudfur of River Clan has a litter of kits before becoming a medicine cat. He has a surviving kit who is already an apprentice by the time of him becoming a medicine cat apprentice. So apparently the rule only applies to having kits as a medicine cat. There isn't any issue of him having to maybe in the future choose between saving his kin over another clanmate, which is the problem the rule was trying to solve in the first place. So it's either less of a rule against having kits altogether and more of a rule about not having kits under 6 months old, or it's okay when Mudfur does it because he's a dude. Medicine cats have siblings, parents, and mentors. Unless they're supposed to be emotionally distant from everyone they have a relationship with, this rule isn't even all that encompassing. Leafpool made an intentionally bad decision of letting Cinderheart do her warrior assessment when her leg was still injured because she cared for Cinderpelt so much. That's it. That's the thing the code was supposed to stop, and it happened anyway, just in a different context. She chose to ignore the health of Cinderheart because she wanted to see her mentor have the life that she never got to. Fathers don't take care of kids as much as mothers are expected to. Leaders and deputies are given leeway to have kids even though they have more of an obligation to serve their clans first and foremost, and clans raise their kids together if not having someone with a dedicated job to raising the kids of the clan. To top it all off, cats aren't shown to care whether a cat is male or female. The only difference in treatment comes when a cat is pregnant. This isn't good world building, it's just sexism. No one in the clans would willingly go through with any of these garbage rules outside of being religious fanatics. No one questions this bias. Why didn't Mudfur pipe up about the rule at Leafpool's trial? Scrollflight didn't speak up about removing the rule even though it tore her and her sister's lives apart. She was just expected to sit there and take the shame for having the audacity to do what they asked her to. The amount of vitriol the sisters got in the books makes me feel sick knowing the full context around the three. Jayfeather would whinge anytime Leafpool would so much as glance at him. StarClan let Ashfur into their hunting grounds, which gave him access to torment Scrollflight in her own clan. Ivypool should tear StarClan apart for letting them get her daughter killed. Bristlefrost isn't coming back. She's gone. Her spirit is never getting a place in StarClan because they messed up. Warrior cats can't keep doing this. StarClan can't be this ultimate force for good, having the utmost loyalty from the clans when they're just as flawed, if not more than the living cats. The authors want it both ways. StarClan is the best thing that can happen to the clans, but it's so easily shaken down that it loses its connection to the living clans, throwing everything into chaos. Any criticism in the universe gets swept aside as just something that was out of their control, and a few books later, actually they did have total control over the factors in the situation. During the Broken Code, when the discussion about if the Dark Forest warriors could ever make it into StarClan, it reminded me of a show I watched a while back called The Good Place. The Good Place centers around a group of humans who get sent to the bad place as torture. They don't know it's the bad place. When Eleanor eventually figures out the game, the demon Michael resets the 4 humans to restart the torture. Over and over again, the gang will always come to the same conclusion with different variables. No matter how hard the demons try and bring them eternal suffering for their crimes in life, they all grow and change to be better people. Try and stay with me, I swear it'll make sense in a sec. They discover the Good Place hasn't had a new person in over 1,000 years because the point system is skewed. Things in life aren't black and white. People can't make singular decisions without the nuance of the situations around them. You buy a flower for your spouse for an anniversary, well, you lost 200 points since the person who grew the rose kicked a dog 6 years back. Biking to work to save the environment, 50 points lost because some guy really wanted the bike for his birthday and you got the last one at that store. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. This all accumulates, so when you die, you're judged where you will go. If you did good, you go to the good place. If you did bad, you're headed to the bad place. This judgment system is unfair. You could be a good person in a bad place all because some arbitrary rules someone made up years ago and that didn't evolve as life got more complicated. After realizing that not only is this system unfair, biased, and lacks nuance, the gang decides to put a place together. A neutral place, so if someone who wasn't too good but weren't too bad, they'd reside there to improve to earn a spot in the good place. People who were obviously bad wind up in the bad place for all eternity. The neutral place is like a gray zone, so people take however long they need to realize some of the mistakes they made in life before moving on to the good place. Warrior Cats needs a neutral place. There's a handful of cats in the Dark Forest who feel sorry for what they've done in life. There's genuine remorse for some of the terrible things they've done. Greywing says that going to StarClan after death removes the point of being sorry afterward. When he receives pushback, Firestar chips in and says that no system is perfect, but being fair is what's truly important.
Greywing looked thoughtful. We are all judged on what we did in our lifetime. It's no use being sorry afterward. It's more important not to break the warrior code in the first place. Rootspring thought this was too harsh.
Surely every warrior has done something wrong. He looked around the others. Is there any cat here who can say for sure they've never broken the warrior code?
The cats exchanged glances. Ashfur definitely broke it, Graystripe growled. Firestar shifted his paws.
No system is perfect, he mewed. We just try to be as fair as we can be.
But punishment for all eternity isn't fair. That's the point of this whole conversation. What if you're like Snowtuft? Someone who had been punished for so long that you don't even remember what you even did. Is there even a point of punishing them anymore? StarClan was willing to send Leafpool to the bad place because her situation was so nuanced. They didn't have a proper way of determining where she would go unless she spoke up for herself. She stood trial to convince these cats that she earned a spot in the good place.
One Star nodded. We try to consider not so much whether they broke the warrior code, he mewed, but why. And we try to decide if, despite everything, their hearts are still true.
I had to persuade StarClan to accept me, Leafpool mewed. I stood in front of some of the greatest warriors the clans have ever known, and convinced them that, despite my code breaking, I was worthy of being a StarClan warrior.
Her belt prickled along her spine, as though the memory of her trial still made her uneasy.
They accepted me. If breaking the warrior code stopped every cat from joining StarClan, the Dark Forest would be overflowing, and these meadows, she paused to sweep her gaze over the rolling landscape, would be empty.
Warrior Cats doesn't have a version of the neutral place, a way for cats who did wrong things in life to atone and come to remorse, or at least act as a failsafe in case they judge a cat wrongly. Juniper Claw was stuck in a place where he had to fight the hopelessness and evil, fighting succumbing to the thing he doesn't want to be. His actions were terrible in life, and thinking he did the right thing is no justification for putting kits, elders, and queens at risk. But to starve him of his goodness forever is disgusting. StarClan believes in only punitive justice. No amount of remorse, even sacrificing your own existence, can get you into StarClan. If you're a Dark Forest warrior and the world falls apart, then you find yourself standing shoulder to shoulder with StarClan, the incredibly rare circumstances mean nothing to them. They'll sooner turn you away than reconsider your placement in the afterlife. You may be able to see StarClan just for a moment before you go back into the eternal darkness, waiting for your spirit to fade into nothing. So, to wrap this up, I want to just clear the air. StarClan's increasing toolkit of weekly powers just doesn't bode well with me anymore. The cool powers, Avengers team-ups, fancy prophecies just fall flat when the characters behind it are just flawed. The books never really engaged critically enough to make the trust in StarClan seem natural. Clans are just expected to fight their neighbors for borders, food, and territory because StarClan says they can't be one big clan. Never mind that the shared resources would benefit everyone. StarClan says no. Medicine cats not being allowed to raise kits means nothing to me when these cats have healthcare, preschool teachers, and a tight-knit community to watch over the doctor's children. But StarClan says no, so we're not even allowed to think about the implications of the rule. Never mind that our God King leaders can have kids willy-nilly, and divided loyalties are never brought up then. Unless it's a woman, naturally. Cats like Ashfur and Mudclaw had no issues getting into StarClan, while Leafpool and Squirrelflight had to beg for their spots. Ashfur, the cat who attempted to kill his leader, and his leader's daughter's kits because she wasn't into him. Squirrelflight and Leafpool had done nothing but good for their clan and almost died, and actually died saving kits. Apparently their hearts weren't true enough at the time for their warrior ancestors. Their world is a hierarchy where StarClan alone is allowed to be on top, and don't you dare think otherwise. Everything they add to StarClan muddies the waters of what once was an average afterlife. Retcons make it hard to tell where to place the blame when something goes wrong, while characters who were once kind in life do a complete 180 the moment their spirit leaves their body. I'm not quite sure where A Starless Clan is going so far, but I hope it brings something new to the table that isn't going to make me add an addendum because they changed the way StarClan is said to function. Maybe the changes to the code will inspire them to look more at the other rules rather than just reordering them. Or we will get a harrowing journey where the clan should look more capriciously at their ancestors, but instead just fall right back onto the status quo. The system never fails. When it does, it's not our fault, and when it is, it's not that bad. We were just trying to be fair. Hey guys, if you made it this far into my video, I want to thank you. I've been working on it for a while and I felt that some of my grievances with StarClan needed to be aired. I hope what I brought was informative, while at least laying some groundwork for why it seems like I'm so critical of StarClan. I'm definitely sure that I missed some facts about StarClan that were introduced in novellas or super editions set in the time before the first series. If I went into more depth about how the clans have fundamentalist cult vibes, this video would be twice as long, and that topic is already done to death already. If you like this video, go check out my other discussion videos on warrior cats. They aren't as serious as this one, but I felt like they were still fun regardless. If you haven't seen it, I'm attempting to host a map. Even if you aren't looking to participate, you could just swing over to that video and check out the storyboard I made since I worked hard on it and it was the first one I've ever done. I'm going to take a short break from videos, but I'll be back with more warrior content in the near future. Thank you for sticking with me while I'm figuring out this whole YouTube thing. I've had a blast reading your comments, having discussions, and learning how to mix audio, because I have a huge problem with that apparently. Goodbye everybody, I'll see you all in a few weeks.